morning. This is the way to a wonderful life. Please know with me now, right now, there is a power within you. It is the Christ within you, and it can lift your life to its highest level. It can change illness into health. It can bring peace amidst turmoil. It can bring success out of failure and victory out of defeat. It can bring companionship and happiness out of loneliness. It responds to you. For this is the power that dwells within you, and so it is. Amen. Thank you for joining me this morning for the Way to a Wonderful Life. I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, coming to you live this morning from Palm Springs, California, teaching from the philosophy of the Mastermind Jesus and the wisdom of the ancients found in the evolutionary science of mind. This program is not pre-recorded, nor is it edited. It is live. For more information about this ministry, please visit www.revbates.tv or www.revbatesontheradio.org. You can also find me on youtube.com by going to youtube.com and putting in the search box The Way to a Wonderful Life channel. That's The Way to a Wonderful Life channel, where you'll find over 95 of my radio broadcasts that you can listen to 24/7 in both English and Spanish. You can also go to MSN, Yahoo, Bing, and Google and put in the search box Reverend Henry Bates, that's B-A-T-E-S, and you'll find everything you want to find out about this ministry. Now, this is a healing and teaching ministry where we go beyond religion and we focus on those simple yet profound spiritual principles given to us by the Mastermind Jesus so that we can believe in our prayer and the answer to it. For we believe and we know that with God, all good things are possible. With God, all good things are possible, and that God responds to us by corresponding to that which we believe to be true for us, to that which we believe to be true for us. Now, you can find that you can send me your prayer request, your questions, your comments, and you can also make a faith offering, a love offering, a tithe, or a donation to this radio ministry, of which I will be deeply grateful for. And you can do that from the website revbates.tv or revbatesontheradio.org, or you can mail those prayer requests, questions, comments, donations to Reverend Henry Bates, that's B-A-T-E-S, P.O. Box 1173, that's P.O. Box 1173, Palm Springs, California, 92263. And you can also leave me a telephone message in the Los Angeles area at 818-476-0088, or in Palm Springs at 760-778-5677. Once again, this is The Way to a Wonderful Life, coming to you live this morning from Palm Springs, California. This program is not pre-recorded, nor is it edited. It is live, and our Way to a Wonderful Life message for today is titled, Never, Never, Never Give Up. Never, never, never give up. And I believe that each and every one of us have within us the potential to increase our spiritual awareness 1,000-fold, if not more. And I believe that the reason we don't do so is because we live in a world where persistence and commitment have been replaced with impatience and a lax reliance on faith. When we read that there is a power within you, this is the truth. This statement is directed to that infinite capacity for faith that is inherent within each and every one of us. And when this faith is in tune with the divine force that corresponds with intelligence, we experience this power within us as the truth for us. You know, we read in the Scripture, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, the evidence of things unseen. And so we know that we go from that faith as the substance of things hoped for, we go to that hope for, to that believing that it's so because we see that evidence of things not seen. We see it in our mind. We see it in our heart. We see it in our soul. We see it in this capacity that we have to have faith that draws to us all things necessary for us to live the wonderful life, the joyful life, to be healed and prospered and blessed, whatever it may be, so that we can experience the holiness of health, the holiness of prosperity, and the holiness of having a blessing in our life every single day of our life. So each and every one of us have this infinite capacity for faith, but we must learn and discover how to use this faith to bring forth into our experience that which God seeks to or desires for us to experience, because we know that every good desire, D meaning of, sire meaning father, is of the Father. Every good desire is of the Father. And as the Mastermind Jesus said, the Father is a spirit, and we must worship him in spirit and in truth. The Father is a spirit, and we must worship him in spirit and in truth. And to worship means to give our attention to give our allegiance to depend on principle, to depend on this principle of God, not person, place, or thing, but to see God as our all in all, to see God as our every solution to every problem, to see God as our answer to every question, to see God as the very living spirit of life within each and every one of us, no matter what it is that's going on in our world or what it is that's going on in the conditions and circumstances in which we live. So we must take into our mind that I do have, say to yourself, I do have this infinite capacity for faith. And I can stir up the spirit within me, and I can find in my mind that desirable condition. I can find in my mind that desirable solution. I can find in my mind that desirable answer that I require to live this life more fully and completely, to have a greater and more satisfying experience of life right where I am, beginning right where I am. Now, this morning I'm going to take some story from Dr. Norman Vincent Peale's book. The book is titled, You Can If You Think You Can, You Can If You Think You Can. Now, you can buy this book at Amazon.com or you can buy it at BarnesandNoble.com. In the early years of building a successful magazine Guidepost, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale and the board of directors believed that the magazine could not survive without an infusion of cash. I am including the telling of this board meeting because I believe that when we see the law, which is principle, and love, which is creative ideas, at work in a true-to-life experience, it gives us a greater sense of spiritual awareness and a greater confidence in our ability to stir up the spirit of faith within us so that we can believe in our prayer and the answer to it too. Now, the director's thought processes seemed frozen, Dr. Peale writes. No ideas were forthcoming. We had invited a woman to this meeting who was not a member of the board, but we included her for the very practical reason that on a previous occasion she had contributed $2,500. Now, this was in 1973 or before. Now, $2,500 in 1973 has the same buying power as $13,274.82 in 2012. Now, is that not incredible? So he said that she had contributed $2,500 to our magazine, and we figured hopefully that lightning might strike twice in the same place. But fully aware of our intent and being of a sagacious and forthright mind, she said, I must put you people out of your misery. I am not going to give you another nickel. Well, instead of putting us out of our misery, this remark only plunged us more deeply into it. But, she quickly added, while I will not give you any more cash, I will give you something of far greater value than money. And at that moment, faced with a stack of bills, now how many of us can relate to this? Faced with a stack of bills, we could not imagine anything more important than money. I will give you a creative and dynamic idea, she said, and with this idea, you can secure all the resources needed to carry on. She began then to examine the situation, asking how many subscribers were needed to establish the magazine on a sound and profitable basis. I did not know for sure, but picked the figure of 100,000 out of the air. Since we had 40,000, we needed that extra 60,000 people for our circulation list if we were to succeed. All right, said our amazing friend, let's face the situation. Let's face the situation. We are in a condition of lack. We lack everything: money, subscribers, equipment, imagination, and ideas. Now, just why do we lack, she demanded, and she supplied the answer to her own question. We lack for the reason that we have constantly been thinking in terms of lack, so therefore we have created a condition of lack. We lack for the reason that we have constantly been thinking in terms of lack, so therefore we have created a condition of lack. And that's how so many of us get into problems. We focus on being unhealthy or illnesses. So many times, if you sit in front of the TV, you'll see about 20 commercials in a 2-hour time span telling you about all these medicines that can cure this and cure that and all these things that frighten us into believing that there are things in the world that have power over our health, rather than affirming that God is my health. I cannot be sick. God is a solution for everything that comes into my life, every condition that I face, including conditions that cause me illness or discomfort or disease. So we must learn to stop talking about the things we don't have, stop talking about how little we have, and start affirming that abundance that God has for us, and start accepting in our mind that our lack is something of the past. Distance ourselves from the idea of lack, distance ourselves in our mind from the idea of disease or illness, distance our mind from the idea that failure can find a place in our mental household, and we will begin to start seeing creative ideas pop into the awareness of our mind, and start seeing that we start feeling healthier. Our mind can control this body that God has given us to walk through this thing called life. But we must condition our mind to take the power that it has, the faith that it has, that faith power, and put that faith into health, put that faith into prosperity, put that faith into success and creative ideas. Now let's go back to this story from Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. Once again, this is from his book, You Can If You Think You Can, and you can buy this book on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. He said, astonishing as this appraisal was, because she just said, we lack for the reason that we have constantly been thinking of terms of lack, so therefore we have created a condition of lack. Astonishing as this appraisal was, we could scarcely argue with it, for obviously we did lack. Nor could we deny that we had been thinking lack. Okay, what can we do about it, I asked. Now, this is Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. Do about it, she snorted. Snorted was his word, not mine. Do about it. Why, stand up to those defeating lack thoughts like men and tell them to get out of your minds. Now, look, I objected, you can't do that. If you mount a frontal attack on an unhealthy thought pattern, instead of exercising those thoughts, you only tend to drive them more deeply into consciousness. Besides, I ended lamely, we don't control our thoughts control us. Was I to learn something? In fact, what then happened revolutionized my own thought attitudes. This is Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. He said, in fact, what then happened revolutionized my own thought attitudes. I shall never forget the disgust with which this lady regarded me. I'm amazed, she declared, at such a weak, willy-nilly reaction. Don't you remember what the great Plato said? Well, frankly, I hadn't the slightest idea what the great Plato said. But not wanting to reveal my ignorance, I asked brightly, to which of the many familiar quotations of Plato do you refer? I refer, she shot back, to the one you never heard. I shall never forget hearing this astonishing woman quote what she said Plato said, and that is, take charge of your thoughts. You can do with them what you will. Take charge of your thoughts. You can do what you will with them. Take charge of your thoughts. You can do what you will with them. How amazing is this? And that is true for a fact, as I began to see. We are not meant to be worms crawling defeated in the presence of a difficult situation. We are men, women, children of God with minds for thinking. We can indeed take charge of our thoughts and do what we will with them. And that is what happened in this instance. How do we go about it? I inquired. Spend 15 minutes right now, she admonished, flushing out those lack thoughts. Presently, she declared, all right, your minds are empty, which I must admit didn't take very long. Isn't that funny? But the mind will not perpetually remain empty, and those thoughts, those lack thoughts, are hanging around waiting for the chance to creep back into your minds where so long hospitably entertained. In other words, if we don't fill our mind with the good, if we don't fill our mind with the prosperous, if we don't fill our mind with that which makes life seem wonderful, and get a sense of that glory of God moving through our mind, our heart, and our joy, our soul as joy and happiness and peace of mind and harmony and beauty, then this is what happens. The negative stuff from the world, the noise and the nonsense of the world that tells us that life is a struggle, that life is hard, that the world is against us, that we have all these diseases and we need all this medicine and we need all these pills. We need a pill to chill out. We need a pill to relax. We need a pill to be lifted up. We need a pill to give us energy. All that noise and nonsense has created so much chaos in minds of people, in the bodies of people, and in the lives of people. So we must fill our mind with the good. So let's go back to Dr. Norman Vincent Peale's story. He writes, so we must keep them displaced by filling the mind with dynamic prosperity thoughts. I want you to look out there in your creative imagination and see or image 100,000 people reading our magazine and, she added, business-wise, who have paid for their subscriptions. I responded, appearing to look out into the distance. Frankly, they look mighty dim to me. Then I happened to look into this woman's eye. Then, he said, I happened to look into this woman's eyes, big, black, snapping eyes. And as I did so, a phrase crossed my mind. The exalted look of the believer. The exalted look of the believer. And in her eyes, I saw mirrored those 100,000 subscribers, and in her eyes, I saw mirrored those 100,000 subscribers. Becoming excited, I leaped to my feet. I see them, I shouted. Ah, isn't that great, she exclaimed that now that you see them, we have them. Now that we see them, we have them. Now that, because we're going to find that evidence of that, our faith is the evidence of things unseen. So now that we see them, we have them. Then surprisingly, she demanded, now let us thank God that he has given us 100,000 subscribers. And in her prayer, she did not ask God for anything. She thanked him for everything. She also repeated a Bible statement, whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. Well, I became so stimulated that I could hardly wait for her to stop praying. And then I leaped to my feet and looked down at where that stack of bills had been, and there they still were. So I guess in my exuberance, I thought the Lord would come down in some sweet chariot and take all those bills away. But that isn't the way God works. When God wants to change a situation, it is not done in some magical way. God changes people, and changed people change situations. God changes people, and changed people change situations. Let's always remember this and never forget it. God changes people, and changed people change situations. That we must act for the change. We must ask for the change. We must declare that the change is taking place. We must declare that I am healed, I am prospered, I am blessed every day. And for some of us, we must do it 1,000 times a day in order to change that consciousness that brought us the lack, the limitation, the debts, the illness, the whatever it is that we may be experiencing, and let it get out of our life forevermore. So let's go back to Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. He says, our directors became unfrozen, terrifically motivated, and they began to throw ideas rapidly onto the table. Of course, 90% of them were no good, but 10% were. And with those, the magazine began to move. Today, Guidepost subscribers number well over 2.25 million. Now, we got to remember that this was written in 1973. So remember, this is all from the book, You Can If You Think You Can, by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And you can buy that book on Amazon.com, or you can buy it on BarnesandNoble.com. And Guidepost Magazine is still available. Just go on to Google and Google for Guidepost Magazine, and you can get a subscription online, or you can get a subscription and have it sent to you. And it's a very uplifting, inspiring magazine with lots of inspiring stories. And I would recommend that if you choose to do that, that you do it. If not, continue to just follow Rev Bates on the radio and The Way to a Wonderful Life on the Internet. Once again, let's just realize within our heart, our mind, and our soul that these lessons that Dr. Norman Vincent Peale was outlining here in this Board of Directors meeting are lessons for all of us. What one can do, all can do. What one can do, all can do. And we must always remember and never forget that God is. God is always available to each and every one of us. And when we say God is, we mean good is. So let's not be frightened by the conditions and the situations that we find ourselves in. Let's not be frightened by the stack of bills. Let's not be frightened by the doctor's diagnosis. Let's not be frightened by the world economy. Let's not be frightened by anything, but hold to that faith in God. Hold to that faith in knowing that my faith is the substance of things unseen. My faith is the evidence of things unseen, the substance of things hoped for. And let's go from that hope for to that faith of believing in that evidence of things unseen, beginning right now, right where we are. Now, most of us can identify with this story in several different ways. It inspires us, it removes fragments of doubt in our mind, and we are motivated to put these ideas into practice for ourselves. Because if we don't put these ideas into practice for ourselves, then it won't mean anything. It's just going to be another lovely, wonderful story we heard on the radio on a Sunday morning. But if we let it, it will remove those fragments of doubt in our mind. It will give us that pathway to prosperity and success and happiness and health. But first we must make up our mind in a definite way what we want to achieve. And as Dr. Peale cautions in his book, we must formulate a goal. We must formulate a goal. Not a fuzzy, vague goal, but one that is sharp, clearly defined, and specific, and very specific. And then we are to pray in an affirmative way about the goal to be sure it is right for us. For if it isn't right for us, which means if there is a doubt in our mind about it being right for us, then it is wrong, and wrong doesn't ever turn out right. I suggest that we spend 15 minutes each day clearing our mind and really getting into the spirit of realizing this goal in our mind until we can see ourselves vividly doing, being, or having it now. And as Dr. Peale writes, never, never, never give up. Keep it going, going, going. Know that you can, if you think you can. Tell yourself this every day of your life until you believe it completely in your heart, your mind, and your soul, and never think of failing. You don't need to. You don't need to. As Dr. Joseph Murphy said, we must never resign ourselves to anything but the resignation that we are allowing ourselves to experience good and more good and increasing good. And let's go and look at some words from the great Reverend Ike when he tells us we can work wonders with our mind. There is one important thing that we must do. We must make up our mind. That is, we must make up our mind. mind. Number one, we must make up our mind what we want to be, make up our mind what we want to do, make up our mind what we want to have. We can work wonders with our mind, but first we must make up our mind. When we make up our mind power goes forward to work for us. That mind power is faith. We conceive when we make up our mind that something always happens, because the idea of which we make up in our mind is the word that goes forth out of our mouth, as we can read in Isaiah 55:11. And we can know that all our obstructions are self-invented. All of our obstructions are self-constructed. So all of our barriers are self-constructed. But thank God that that all of them can be self-destructed through our mind power, the power of our faith. We are either our own devil or we are our own God. We are the only one who gives to us, and we are the only one that takes from us. And so we must begin to realize this every day of our life, that it's up to us to choose. Choose this day whom ye shall serve, we read in the Scripture. Choose this day. Are we going to serve the good? Are we going to serve God? Are we going to serve this infinite presence, this intelligence that created all that we see, and this infinite presence that individualized its power, its spirit, its intelligence in each and every one of us? That are we going to believe in this living spirit within us, this image likeness of God that is part of who we are? Or are we going to believe in the noise and the nonsense of the world and let ourselves be defeated? Are we going to believe in the noise and the nonsense of the world and let ourselves accept illness? Are we going to believe in the noise and the nonsense of the world and let ourselves accept financial struggle and indebtedness? Or are we going to let ourselves be healed and prospered and blessed, knowing that there's a power within me that can lift me up, that can change me, and as it changes me, it changes all the conditions, it changes all the circumstances, and it changes all the situations in which I find myself. So each and every day, let us affirm with the joy of the Lord that today is the day the Lord hath made, and I am going to rejoice and give thanks for it. And I'm going to let myself feel the presence of God move through my mind, my heart, and my soul as I let my faith be the substance of things hoped for. And then I go from that hope to knowing that my faith is the evidence of things not seen, and knowing and believing that those things that I do not see in the physical but see in the unseen spiritual realm of God, they are become manifest in my life in the right and perfect way, in the right and perfect time, as I declare that my faith can make me whole, and I can find the holiness in my health, the holiness in my work, the holiness in my prosperity, the holiness in my success, and the holiness in all my relationships, and I will feel the holiness of the Spirit as it moves through me, as me, and for me, creating this most wonderful life. And I can say with certainty and I can say with joy, I rejoice and give thanks right now, right where I am, for the best of times and the best of everything. And so it is. Amen. Once again, I want to thank you for being with me today. It's been my great pleasure to have you, and I hope you join me for my next broadcast right here on KTYM, AM 1460 radio, and at www.ktym.com worldwide. Next Sunday morning, right at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. That's 10:30 Eastern time, 9:30 in the Midwest. And you can also find me on RevBates.tv and Rev Bates on the radio.org, and I welcome your prayer requests. The one thing that this ministry does, that it's been doing for 13 years, is responding to prayer requests. And I am always so glad that when people turn to God in prayer, that turn to that greater something, that power greater than we are, to look for the answers, to look for the solutions, to look for that change within their own consciousness, consciousness that will give them relief, that will give them a feeling of hope and inspiration so that they can become aware of the ideas that prospering, the healthy ideas that God has for them. So please feel free to send me your prayer requests, and you can do that from the website revbates.tv or revbatesontheradio.org, and you can also send those to Reverend Henry Bates, that's B-A-T-E-S, P.O. Box 1173, that's P.O. Box 1173, Palm Springs, California, 92263. Once again, this has been Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates coming to you live from Palm Springs, California this morning, teaching from the philosophy of the Mastermind Jesus and the wisdom of the ancients. You can find everything you want to find out about this ministry at www.revbates.tv or revbatesontheradio.org, and you can go to youtube.com, and you'll find 95 of my radio broadcasts at youtube.com. If you put in the search box the Way to a Wonderful Life channel, that's the Way to a Wonderful Life channel, you'll find over 95 of my radio broadcasts that you can listen to 24/7 in both English and Spanish. You can also go to MSN, Yahoo, Bing, and Google and put in the search box Reverend Henry Bates, that's B-A-T-E-S, and you'll find everything you want to find out about this ministry. Now, once again, you can read my weekly messages on revbates.tv in English, Spanish, and Italian, and you can find on that website some amazing information that will inspire you, that will guide you, that will direct you, that will motivate you to feel the presence of God in your life in a greater way, to feel the presence of God in all that you do, and to realize that God is our all in all. That in the book of Isaiah we can read, I am the Lord. Besides me there is none other. Besides me there is no thing. So let's stop fighting the no thing and start accepting the